All right, so I'll start us off. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you once again on our Bible study just to fellowship, God, and read more about your word. So we ask that you enlighten us and give us the keys to what we're going to read. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Here we go. Let me start it off. All right, here we go.
Chapter 4, Cain and Abel. Now Adam had sexual relations with his wife, Eve, and she became pregnant. When she gave birth to Cain, she said, "With the Lord's help, I have produced a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd, while Cain cultivated the ground. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. "Why are you so angry?" the Lord asked Cain. "Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master." One day Cain suggested to his brother, "Let's go out into the fields." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother? Where is Abel?" "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother's guardian?" But the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield good crops for you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you will be a homeless wanderer on the earth." Cain replied to the Lord, "My punishment is too great for me to bear. You have banished me from the land, and from your presence you have made me a homeless wanderer. Anyone who finds me will kill me." The Lord replied, "No, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Okay. Let's work our way down. So in the first line, it talks about how Adam had sexual relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant. I think that's good to see that. I think that kind of could connect with what we talked about before. Sexual relations is for married people. So if you're not a married person, sexual relations, you cannot partake in sexual relations. Sex is something for married people, like I said, between a husband and his wife, a wife and her husband. So if you do not yet have a wife, biblically speaking, you are not supposed to be indulging in sexual relations. And we also see, it says in the second sentence, it says, when she gave birth to Cain, she said, "With the Lord's help, I have produced a man." So we begin to see that producing children is God's business. You and me have no say in if we're going to have a son, a daughter, twins, or even get your wife pregnant, like we talked about last week. These are all things that have to do with God. You can, sleep with your wife. She may not get pregnant because it's not in God's timing or God's will. And she might get pregnant because that's what God wanted. We see what else going down. It says in verses 2, she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. It says, when they grew up, Abel became a shepherd while Cain cultivated the ground. So we know that God sent Adam out to cultivate the ground. So one thing we're seeing is it seemed, as we talked about last week, that Cain was under, the same trade that his dad was under, which was, a curse. And Abel was a shepherd, and we know that Adam was not a shepherd. So Abel seems to be the one who the favor of the Lord is upon his life in a way that it's not on Cain's. And you're going to see another thing we talked about in verses 3 going down. I'll have you talk about it. It talked about how during the harvest time, Cain presented some of his crop as a gift to the Lord, but it specifies in verses 4 that Abel brought a gift, but he brought the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. And the Lord accepted Abel's gift, but he did not accept Cain's gift. So I want you to talk about, Stan, like what we take from that particular part, 3 and 4.
Yeah, what I take from that is whenever you give to God, you're supposed to give your best. The reason why God was very happy with Abel's gift is because he didn't give him any defective flock, any defective lamb that he would have threw away anyways, or like cooked, you know what I'm saying, or whatever the case may be. And on the other hand, Cain took some stuff that was not really valuable to him and offered it to God. And the moral of the story is God is mighty. He's the creator of all things. And even though he came and, anything you give to him is not going to even do anything. Like, you can't give him anything that's going to satisfy him. It's more of a heart posture thing of showing him where he is placed in your life. So if he sees that you're really giving him something that's not valuable to you, he's going to reject it. At the same way, even if you give something that's valuable, but your heart posture is mad, he's going to reject it as well. You have to give in a manner that
you have to be a cheerful giver. That's what it talks about in Corinthians, a cheerful giver. So
yeah, you hit it on the head. Those are the right words. Be a cheerful giver. Don't, and you also have to give respectfully. Give something that is actually meaningful to you, and that's pretty much it. And that's different. I'm not telling people to go out and give and to a point where they can't afford anything. I'm saying give according to what the Spirit leads you to give, and also give with a cheerful heart. So
and
that's
the only thing that I was gonna add now, because we see that whenever you're reading Old Testament, because we live based on the New Covenant, the things that we're gonna take from the Old Testament, we always want to try to translate it into the New Covenant to see how can we eat from this, like this particular story, what can we take from it? And so what you talked about was offering the best portions was why Abel's gift was accepted. So now I want us, because last week we did this, we're going to go to Romans chapter 12, starting at verses 1. And we're going to see how this particular text translates to the New Testament and how we can correlate the two to apply it in our life today. So we see in Romans chapter 12, starting at verses 1, it says, "And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him." So now when you translate this, what we correlated last week is in the Old Testament, they would give sacrifices to God. And God, did not accept sacrifices that were not the best portion because he's God, meaning you got to give me the best of the best or else I'm not going to accept it. So now when you translate that in the New Testament, because we are told to give our bodies to Christ as a living sacrifice, it's the same thing. Because you're going to see God ends up telling Cain in verses 5, he says, no, in verses 6, the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you so angry?" The Lord said, he asked Cain, he said, "Why do you look so dejected?" He says in verse 7, "You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out." So you're going to see it's the same thing. If they both brought sacrifices to God, but one was accepted and one wasn't, because this dude Cain brought the one that was just pretty much, it's either average or it's dejected. We don't really know. But what we do know is it wasn't the best portions. Then when you and me are offering our lives to God as a sacrifice, letting our bodies be a sacrifice to God, you have to understand, if you want God to accept you, and now this is not so much about salvation because we know we're saved through faith, but I'm talking so much now in the means of operating in ministry, the means of anointing, because this is something I was actually talking about today. Is there's a reason why today we don't see the church move in the level of anointing that it did in the time of Jesus's ministry, or in the time of the 12 apostles, or in the time of a Paul. And that's because the 12 apostles, Paul, these guys are willing to give up everything to allow their lives to be pure, to be used for the works of ministry. In 2 Timothy, I believe it is, we've always read about how there's everyday utensils, and then there's utensils that are used for special occasions. But in that sense, that's kind of the connection I'm trying to bring here, is when you do not offer your body to God as a sacrifice, meaning you're still sleeping around, you're watching porn, you're like, screw it, I'm gonna live how I want. What happens is you are not, you're not, God's not gonna accept you as a tool that he's gonna flow through in a way to, in an anointing way, because you are indulging without conviction in all types of sexual immorality. So now it goes back to, where is it that I want to read it in, I believe it's in Timothy, just so I can make my point in terms of being a utensil. That, yeah, it's 2 Timothy chapter 2. And I'm going to read it because I'm trying to make a point here for the viewer to understand how I'm trying to connect this. Is Abel brought the best portions of his lambs, Cain didn't. You and me can both be Christians, and you see Max is used on a different level in ministry, and I'm not. And sometimes, not all the time, this is the reason, but sometimes the reason is because Max is willing to allow God to transform him. He's willing to say yes to God, change me. Whereas I may say, you know what? I'm saved, but I'm not trying to stop sleeping around. I'm not trying to stop watching porn. I'm not trying to stop whacking off or masturbating. I'm trying to just do me. I don't want to stop smoking weed. So what happens is you become an ordinary utensil. So in 2 Timothy chapter 2, Paul writes, and starting at verses 20, 2 Timothy chapter 2, starting at verses 20, Paul says, in a wealthy home, some utensils are made of gold and silver, and some are made of wood and clay. The expensive utensils are used for special occasions, and the cheap ones are for everyday use. If you keep yourself pure, you will be a special utensil for honorable use. Your life will be clean, and you will be ready for the master to use you for every good work. So I say that to say now, when you offer your life to God as a living sacrifice and you walk in purity, you allow the Spirit of God to transform you, God's going to accept you. And he's not only going to accept you, but you're going to be a special utensil for God to use for honorable occasions. So you see, Moses was used by God. God used him to split the Red Sea. Paul cast a demon out of a girl. I was reading that story saying, man, Paul looks at the lady, Max, who had the spirit of divination on her, and he simply says, get out. And the demon comes out. And I'm like, man, this dude had an anointing on him. But there's levels to this. There is a level, because you don't think when Abel was given the best portions of his land, that probably hurt. Think about that. Like, yo, this is the best portion, and I'm about to just give it up. It hurts. But it's the same thing when you correlate that in the New Testament now to us. When we give our life to God and we give our bodies to God as a holy sacrifice, it said in Romans, give him the type of body that he's going to find acceptable, meaning you turn away from certain things by the power of the Holy Spirit and by obedience to God, and you will be accepted by God for honorable occasions. And that's kind of what I got in that portion. And I think we can move down if you don't have anything else to add, Max. I think you can take it from, I'd say you could take it from 7 going down.
Okay, cool. You will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must do it and be its master. So once again, God is giving him a warning. God is giving him like, yo, he's giving him like a tip. You feel me? He's like, he says, do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, this is what's gonna happen. He's like, God could see around the corner. And I love how he uses this analogy of there's a door and there's something behind the door. God can see what's behind the door. You can't. So he's actually like, yo, he's your friend. Like, yo, I know it's behind the door. Trust me. Just do this and you'll be fine. But he says, but if you refuse, watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. And we understand that non-believers are a slave of sin. And Paul and the rest of the disciples tell us not to enslave ourselves with certain sins as well. So he says, the sin is eager to control you. That's what sin wants to do. Sin wants to put you into addiction. So you can continuously be in the sin. It's a trap so that they can keep you in there. But he says, you must subdue it and be its master. So this is, so you subdue it. You subdue it by doing what is right before you go through that door and allow the sin to control you. So before you can open that door, you do what is necessary. And subduing can mean removing certain things from your life. Subduing can mean getting the power from prayer or from the scriptures, so that way you can overcome certain sins. And you can use the sin.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna ask you my question now.
Sure. So you can the sin can also be temptation. So the temptation could be behind that door. And it's our job, like we spoke about before. It says you will never be tempted more than you can handle. God will show you a way out of it. So God is showing him a way out of this temptation, and it's up to you to take it.
And now my question to you now is for the Christian now, like that you and I would talk to, that says, okay, Max, okay, what if I don't want to do what is right? Does this apply to me too? Like what happens to me as a Christian if I say, I just want to keep smoking weed or sleeping around? Like, I'm a Christian though, but I want to do me. How would you say this applies to them as well now?
I mean, I don't know if you reject God's word, then I mean, you got to figure out who's your authority. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they're just being disobedient. There's penalty for sin, bro. And the Bible is very, very clear. If you read all through Proverbs, he talks, and I was actually reading that today. It says, an evil person sets a trap and falls in their own trap. You know what I mean? So there's certain, and Proverbs talks all about it. He says, you do this, this will happen. You do this, this will happen. You do this, this will happen. So the bottom line is, Jesus, God, like you said, Jesus says, my burden, my yoke, or
my
whatever
yoke,
the case
my
is,
yoke is not burdensome.
So at the end of the day, God is actually giving him grace. He's like, yo, I know, like, this is us as Christians. We read the scriptures. God says, I know what's behind that door.
And he told them back. He said, sin is
exactly. So this is us as believers. We read the scriptures and God tells us what's behind that door. And because we trust God, we say, I believe you, and I'm not going to go through that door. Now, obviously, sometimes we may be in disobedience, whatever the case is, but understand what happens when you do it. If the scripture says going to the immoral woman's house leads to death or to disease, you can expect that. You feel me? That's what the scripture says. So I think God here gives this guy grace, just like he gives us by the scriptures, and says, listen, I know what's behind that door. Don't go there. Let me tell you how to get over this temptation or this sin. But if you refuse, it will control you. And that's just how we are to live as Christians. Trusting God.
So now let's continue going down at 8 to see, now that he didn't listen, but let's see what happened.
So God told you what was going to happen. And this is the person who is in disobedience, or the person who rejects it altogether. One day Cain suggests to his brother, let's go out into the fields. And while they're in the fields, Cain attacks his brother Abel and kills him. So this is the result of Cain opening that door that God told him not to open, because he told him that there's sin behind it. He opens it. The sin, which is the anger, controls him and causes him to kill his brother. God warned him, and he disregarded God. So as a result, once again, we always say there's penalty to sin. So this penalty was him killing him and then being cursed later. And I'll read verse 9. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother? Where is Abel?" God knows where he is. We just ask him. He said, "I don't know." Cain responded, am I my brother's guardian? But the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield good crop for you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you will be a homeless wanderer of the earth." So to recap, God sees that he's disappointed. God says, "Yo, I'm telling you what's behind that. Do what's right, or else something bad is going to happen." He disregards God, goes in front of the door, is enslaved by sin. Anger takes over him. He kills his brother, and because of that, God has to come down on him hard. He says, "Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield crops for you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you will be a homeless wanderer of the earth." Penalty for sin. Bottom line.
Yeah. How about you, Stan? What do you got, Stan? What do you take?
Same thing. One thing I see is how when God confronted him about the sin, he didn't have a repentant heart. He kind of backed it up as like, what do you mean where he is? I'm not his guardian. Kind of covering it up instead of confessing what he did. So that's one thing I see here. So he did the sin and he backed it up, and God gave him what was due for him. And the one thing I see is it's not that you can't be angry, it's how you let anger lead you to sin. So like anger could lead you to jealousy in this case. So like for him, his anger led him to jealousy. Anger gives the devil a foothold. I don't know the verse we can read about that, but
I believe that's in
anger gives the devil a foothold. So anger is like a tool. That's why we got to be slow to anger, because anger is a tool the devil can use to get you out of character. And that's kind of what we see with Cain here. And you know, he came up with a plan to kill his brother because of anger that led to jealousy.
Yeah, I wanted to read the example about that last week, because I think that was a good point. In Luke 22, because it goes to show you that the sin represents Satan as well, because sin it's in connection with Satan, and you're gonna see in Luke 22 with Judas, starting at verses 1, it says the festival of unleavened bread. Luke chapter 22, I'm gonna read at verses 1. It says the festival of unleavened bread, which is also called Passover, was approaching. The leading priests and teachers of religious law were plotting how to kill Jesus, but they were afraid of the people's reaction. Then Satan entered Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12 disciples, and he went to the leading priests and captains of the temple guard to discuss the best way to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted and they promised to give him money. So he agreed and began looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus so they could arrest him when the crowds weren't around. So you're going to see, like Cain, the enemy is, Jesus says in Matthew 18, there's always going to be temptation to sin. He says that because Satan is in the world. There's always going to be temptation. That's why you have good thoughts, bad thoughts. The Holy Spirit is the author of all our good thoughts. All the good we do, we can't take credit for it because the Spirit of God is what has given us that. Hey, do this, do that, don't do this. But the same thing, when you do bad, there's a spirit behind that. And that's our fleshly nature, or that's Satan and his demons throwing these thoughts our way. And the reality is, like Max said, God warns Cain, and Cain doesn't listen. So guess what? That thought, he gives into it by his anger, and Satan is able to use him. What we take from this is, don't allow Satan to use you, even if it's temporarily, because the reality is, this is why you have to abide by the scriptures. The scriptures is God's GPS to get you and me to live a life of godliness. He says, do this. But if you, like with Cain, he says, don't do this. Cain doesn't, he listened. All right, you don't listen. This is the consequence. You killed your brother. You became a tool for Satan because you didn't listen. So it's the same thing. Non-believer Christian. This is why the Bible says not to let the sun go down on your anger. So you and your wife get in an argument. You're like, man, I'm not apologizing. Now you go to work mad, and now that coworker, she shows up and she's half naked, and now you're like, let me go talk to her because you're mad at your wife. You're not in your right mindset. Anger gives the enemy a foothold. Mm-hmm. And this is the reason you're going to see, like Judas, he wasn't even so much angry, but you're seeing that Satan is the author behind the sin. Mm-hmm. When the religious leaders are looking for a way to kill Jesus, it says Satan entered Judas, and then he went over to them and gave them, hey, we can do this. So you're going to see sin. When sin is crouching, that represents the enemy. It represents Satan and his demons. They want to use you as a tool to be a vessel they flow through to sin. Mm-hmm. Because the same way the Holy Spirit takes on a body as a vessel it flows through to do good works on the earth, it's the same thing with Satan and his demons. Mm-hmm. Satan's not just some dude in the air who's hollow and he's doing damage. No, he needs a vessel to flow through. Let me enter that person and cuss him out. Let me enter her in road rage. Let me enter this dude and then walk into a mall and blast 100 people. What do you think is behind that? The enemy. The enemy's behind that. And this is why we have to subdue sin, because if you don't, it will subdue you. And what we see with Cain is he became the first homeless person on the earth. He's the first homeless. That's crazy. So in scripture, we have the first homeless person on the earth. Now, does this mean, and we talked about that last week, we are not going to go on record to say every homeless person is cursed. We're not going to go that far. But I will say sometimes that could be the case. Because in Cain's case, that was his discipline for not listening. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's you that make the prodigal son. In a sense, I'm not going to say the prodigal son was cursed, but in a sense he was cursed because everything began to go downhill for him when he left home. Everything began to go downhill. So it's like until he returned back to his senses, everything was going to continue to go downhill. So you're going to see with Cain, because he's not listening, because now he kills his brother, everything goes downhill once it's cursed. And God tells him, no matter how hard you work, the ground's not going to yield good crops for you. And I think we talked about this earlier. There's certain people.
There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. I'm not laughing, but I mean, that's just the reality. You can buy him 1,000 fields. Until God raises that curse, there's nothing you can do to override God.
Yeah, that's between God and the person, and that's only right, because in the end they were born without everybody around. You know, they came into the world by themselves with God, and that when they leave the world, they gotta face God. So it's a relationship between the person and God. So.
And one thing about the curse that I wanted to say as well is because God is in control, you can be under a curse forever, or you can be under a curse for a season. Because we know Nebuchadnezzar, God humbled him for 7 years and he ate grass. He lived in the fields like an animal and ate grass. But it said after 7 years, God restored him. So that's the thing. A curse can be for 5 years. A curse can be because even we were cursed once, but then Jesus took the curse and died on the cross. And now we're no longer cursed. Curse is the one that's hung on the tree. So the reality and the good news is you can be under a curse for a season because God's trying to get your attention. But like Max said, if you can have spiritual discernment to see someone is under a curse, be careful. Because like I said, if you try to intervene with what God's trying to do in your life, you're going to find yourself getting some discipline that wasn't even warranted for you, but you're getting your nose digged in. And that's the reason why I think that's an interesting point when God marks Cain so no one can kill him. Think about that, because Cain could have, but that goes to show me that even though he's under this curse, God has a time for everything or a reason for everything. Because if that wasn't the case, God would have had him
dead.
Yeah,
he didn't want him dead.
Exactly.
Or he still had some kind of provision for him.
Exactly. And we're gonna find out Cain ends up having a kid when we go to the next section. He ends up having a kid.
That provision comes through.
There you go. Good revelation.
So verse 13, I'll read it. He said, Cain replied to the Lord, my punishment is too great for me to bear. You have banished me from the land and from your presence. You have made me a homeless wanderer. Anyone who finds me will kill me. And that's what we were just talking about. Because I guess in this time, if you didn't have resources, you were an easy target. And God says, the Lord replied, no, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you. Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So God says, yo, I got your back as far as your protection. And I'm gonna show people this sign that for he's not to be touched.
That's favor. That's favor, bro.
That's grace. He didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve that. So, and that's why when you read the scriptures and you learn God's grace, he's like, yo, he didn't have to do that. He did it. And some people didn't get it, but God decides who gets his grace, who doesn't get his grace. Some people, God went hard on them. Some people, he's like, yo, I'm gonna go hard. I'm gonna give you this little piece. You didn't do anything to deserve it, but for my kindness, I'm gonna do that for you.
And to me, that connects with the prodigal son, because even though the prodigal son, like I said, the Bible didn't say he was under curse, but I'm thinking in terms of seeing how everything was going downhill for him, God's favor was still upon him because he didn't die, and at the right time, God allows him. Because even when we come to our senses, that's still God's grace, because everything that happens with us still comes down to God. God told Moses, "Who gives you the ability to speak?" So from that, I understand everything I do. It's still God.
God's
so
grace,
even that I came to my senses is God. And you're going to see the prodigal son. He comes to his senses and goes back home. So what I see is you can be under curse and God's favor still be upon you, which is, again, Paul. Paul's not yet in Christ, but God's grace is upon him, because even when God sends Ananias to go get Paul to to touch Paul, he's like, but Paul's been killing Christians. And he's like, hey, go to Paul.
Exactly, yo. And that's what I love about Paul, especially when he talks about certain things. He says, God has graced me with the opportunity to speak to you guys, or God has graced me with the opportunity to be apostle, or God, you feel me? He always understands that he don't deserve it, and there's nothing he did. His righteousness didn't lead him to God putting his favor on him like that. And like you said, man, God has kindness, man. He's very kind God.
How about you, Stan? What do you conclude? And then we can move on after you.
Yeah, you guys hit it on the head. God is such a graceful God. I know there's a Bible verse that kind of shows us that, he doesn't hold rain from the ungodly. He gives rain to the godly and the ungodly.
Just and the unjust, as Matthew chapter 7.
Right. And that just shows you, even though God is angry, he always has love, even in his anger and his punishment. So that's the one thing I start to see even from the beginning of time. I think Max pointed it out where Adam and Eve sinned, and then he gives them their punishment, but he kills an animal and clothes them. Like he's a really good God. Like he cares. Like he could have been like, bro, I'm not even gonna give you nothing. I'm like gonna turn my back from you. Screw you guys. But now he's like, you guys are naked. You guys know you're naked. I'm gonna clothe you. You know what I'm saying? He says, he's like, Cain, I know that you're going to be homeless, but no one can touch you. Like he always, and it's starting to show me with the punishment, he has a grace still in that punishment. He always has a grace in there. So that's the God we serve, man. A God that cares. He doesn't want to punish you, but in that punishment, he's still there for you. And that's the good thing about God.
And the verse you read, I correct myself, is Matthew 5, starting at verses 42 to 48. It says, you have heard the law that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. And that way you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends his rain on the just and the unjust alike. So I think that goes to show you, like you said, even people who do evil, God still gives them grace and favor, and he's a good God.
Exactly. So, that right there that's what you call true love. But if there's nothing else, we can continue. All right, here we go.
The descendants of Cain. Cain had sexual relations with his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Then Cain founded a city, which he named Enoch after his son. Enoch had a son named Irad. Irad became the father of Mehujael. Mehujael became the father of Methushael. Methushael became the father of Lamech. Lamech married two women. The first was named Ada, and the second was Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who was the first of those who raise livestock and live in tents. His brother's name was Jubal, the first of all who play the harp and flute. Lamech's other wife, Zillah, gave birth to a son named Tubal-Cain. He became an expert in forging tools of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain had a sister named Naamah. One day, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice. Listen to me, you wives of Lamech. I have killed a man who attacked me, a young man who wounded me. If someone who kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 77 times.
Interesting. I think for me, one thing that stands out here, as we talked about just now, is even though Cain was cursed, God still had a plan for his life because he marked him and he was not going to allow anyone to kill him. And another thing that you see is, we talked about it last week, is this generational curses are real. And you're going to see with Lamech, no, is it Lamech? No, it is, it's Ada. No, Jabal. Ada gave birth to Jabal. Yeah, Jabal was the first of those who raised livestock and live in tents. So you're gonna remember God's curse on Cain was that he was gonna be a homeless wanderer, and Jabal, it says he lives in tents, and we all know a tent is something you sleep in when you're like in the woods or the jungle or something. Pretty much, that's like your form of a place to live. And Jabal's the first one to live in a tent, which goes to show like everyone before him, which would have been Enoch. It's Cain's son Enoch, Enoch's son Irad, Irad's son Mahuel. Mahuel also had Methushael, and Methushael had Lamech. So you're talking about all these generations, none of them lived in tents, even a tent. So you're going to see generational curses are real. That's something we talked about last week. And the good news for us today under the new covenant is, no matter what curse is in your generation, if you're born again, you're free from every curse. Because once you're in Jesus Christ, you're born into a new life, a life where you don't die, a life where demons don't possess you, a life where you're not gonna remain enslaved if you don't want to, because the scriptures and the power of the Spirit are gonna lead you to freedom. So, but we do know, aside from Christ, generational curses are real. So if you're not in Christ, generational curses are real. But through Christ, there is freedom. And that's great news for someone who might be watching this. And you know that there's so many generational curses attaching your family with witchcraft, or all types of sleeping around, kids and wedlocks, and whatever you name, adultery, all these things. The reality is, if you give your life to Jesus, it can stop with you. It can stop with you. So we see generational curses are real. And then we also see, what else? This also goes to show you why God didn't want Cain to die.
He has a lineage.
Yeah.
It's not the lineage of Jesus, but it's still, I guess he wanted to use his lineage. And I think the end of it is somebody, I guess it says the young man who wounded me. So he wounded him, but he didn't kill him. But I think that's pretty much it.
But the other thing I see is the same thing, the same way generational curses carry down from generation to generation, the same way blessings and protection and promises carry down from
Abraham.
generation to generation. Yeah,
Abraham,
because
David.
the promises that God gave on Cain carried over to his descendant, who kind of declared, in verse 24, it says, if someone who kills Cain is punished 7 times, then the one who kills me will be punished 77 times. So I just wanted to, and the fact that they were aware of that, I just wanted to point that out.
And so they knew about the Cain curse, is what you're saying.
They knew about the blessing too. They knew about the protection and the promise God gave. So for me, and they were confident about that. So for me, I think you could be confident in the blessings that come from your generation as well.
And that's true, because the reason why I agree with that is because, like Jesus, right? I have confidence that no weapon formed against me will prosper, because that's what the scripture tell me. And if I'm a child of God, if I'm in Christ Jesus, then the promises that he has are for me too. Which means if Jesus conquered death, then I'm going to conquer death. If Jesus had power by the Holy Spirit, then I have power by the Holy Spirit, because the reality is I inherit the things he inherits, which is why we also inherit persecution and suffering, because those are the things he had. So like Stanley said, you inherit the good and the bad, but the truth is, I agree. That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah, you inherit the whole thing. The whole thing. Whatever comes, even the genes. The genes and everything. You know, spiritually and physically. But yeah, that's all I got from this. And then the last thing is, I think we uncovered that Cain. I know people might have a question about, like, who's the wife? If there's like barely anybody alive.
Oh yeah.
And we kind of uncovered that Cain most likely married his sister from like Adam and Eve, and we'll get more into that.
Yeah, when we get to verses 5, chapter 5.
Right. Well, we'll start to see when we're reading Genesis 4, it's more so giving you an account of what happened between Cain and Abel, but that doesn't mean that the sisters and brothers weren't at that time it happened. Just wanted to give an understanding there. Well, we can continue to the next section.
The birth of Seth. Adam had sexual relations with his wife again, and she gave birth to another son. She named him Seth, for she said, God has granted me another son in place of Abel, whom Cain killed. When Seth grew up, he had a son and named him Enosh. At that time, people first began to worship the Lord by name.
It says people. So once again, I think these are just accounts. Don't necessarily know when the other kids. Well, obviously, that would have to be after Seth, but you don't know the time frame of when this is happening.
But anything else here, or if not,
No, we can go to 5.
All right, sounds good.
Chapter 5, the descendants of Adam. This is the written account of the descendants of Adam. When God created human beings, he made them to be like himself. He created them male and female, and he blessed them and called them human. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him. In his very image, he named his son Seth. After the birth of Seth, Adam lived another 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Adam lived 930 years, and then he died. When Seth was 105 years old, he became the father of Enosh. After the birth of Enosh, Seth lived another 807 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Seth lived 912 years, and then he died. When Enosh was 90 years old, he became the father of Kenan. After the birth of Kenan, Enosh lived another 815 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Enosh lived 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan was 70 years old, he became the father of Mahalalel. After the birth of Mahalalel, Kenan lived another 840 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Kenan lived 910 years, and then he died. When Mahalalel was 65 years old, he became the father of Jared. After the birth of Jared, Mahalalel lived another 830 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Mahalalel lived 895 years, and then he died. When Jared was 162 years old, he became the father of Enoch. After the birth of Enoch, Jared lived another 800 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Jared lived 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch was 65 years old, he became the father of Methuselah. After the birth of Methuselah, Enoch lived in close fellowship with God for another 300 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Enoch lived 365 years, walking in close fellowship with God. Then one day, he disappeared because God took him. When Methuselah was 187 years old, he became the father of Lamech. After the birth of Lamech, Methuselah lived another 782 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Methuselah lived 969 years, and then he died. When Lamech was 182 years old, he became the father of a son. Lamech named his son Noah, for he said, "May he bring us relief from our work and the painful labor of farming this ground that the Lord has cursed." After the birth of Noah, Lamech lived another 595 years, and he had other sons and daughters. Lamech lived 777 years, and then he died. By the time Noah was 500 years old, he was the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Just to start off, one thing I wanted to point out is how the Bible makes sure it has an account for the lineage from Adam and how it all the way connects to Jesus. And I just wanted to point that out. So like if you kind of pay attention as you read the Bible, it'll connect, Adam and then Seth and then Abraham and then all the way down to Jesus. So I just wanted to point that out.
I love the fact that these dudes are in the lineage like Noah, who's so important, or Abraham, who's so important, all the way down to David. So they're all, God is working like through. You can see God working, and then you hear the story of Esther and how that happened. Even the story of Judah, how that happened. So God is working, and then you see it come to fruition when Jesus is born.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for me,
I have a question, but I'm gonna ask it off record at the end of our Bible study.
Yeah, and then one thing I wanted to point out in verse 1, it says, "This is the written account of the descendants of Adam." It says, "When God created human beings, he made them to be like himself." So just to point out, if we didn't point out already, God designed us to be just like him. So we are made in the image of God. Therefore, we are pretty much just like him. And I wanted to point that out. And when he was making us, he literally was like, where do I get inspiration from? And he was like, let me kind of make something that's similar to me. And that's kind of how we came about. So I just wanted to point that out. And then another thing I wanted to point out was Enoch. Enoch was a person who lived in close fellowship with God. And this shows me like his relationship was so tight with God that like he didn't even die. He literally, God took him up to heaven. And for me, that like only Jesus did that after that, right? Like it was only him and Jesus, really. So Elijah,
yeah, Elijah, yes, Elijah never died.
With the SH, or no, it's the J, right? JIH.
J-A-H.
AH, yeah. Okay.
That shows like you can have such a close relationship with God that I don't know, like who knows? I can't limit him. Maybe this could happen again, but like this shows you how like there's no limit to how close you can get with God. this shows you like you really can get close to God to where, you know, it's unheard of.
And it says actually when we read Genesis 6 that Noah was a person who was in close fellowship as well. So and God used them. God used them because of their fellowship.
Right. And then another thing we see is Lamech, Noah's dad, spoke a blessing upon Noah's life, saying, "May he bring us relief from our work and painful labor of forming this ground that the Lord has cursed." So that goes to show you your father, your mother, they have power in their tongue in professing blessings and curses. Just wanted to point that out because
that's good.
you'll start to see when we read the Bible, you'll see Isaac, how he like literally it's so important that he's like he gives the blessing to the second son, and he's like, bro, I already gave it out. You know what I'm saying? Like you would have thought it was just words. No, it's powerful. So that means there's a blessing in your parents' words. So if you have parents out there speaking bad on their children, that is really dangerous territory, because what you can say may manifest and because God has made it in a way where a parent can profess on their children.
And then another thing I've learned to connect to that is, in the same way you can use your mouth to speak words of blessing over your children, you can also use your mouth to speak words of a curse on your children. Because one thing I've learned from other parents I've dealt with, and I've seen this, is when you speak bad on someone else's kids, 9 times out of 10, what you like, oh, your kid's making an amount to nothing, then your kids amount to nothing. So you gotta be careful, because that's the thing. You're wishing bad on Max's kid, but you're trying to wish good on your kids. No. God doesn't like just scales, Proverbs says.
Exactly.
So you're wishing good on yours, but bad on his. God says we're gonna make this even. Then yours are gonna be bad.
Honestly, the believer shouldn't even say such a thing. You got to pray for him and try to help. Your job is to try to help him. Jesus says, I have a new command, love. You feel me? So your job is to love and help and try to build. You feel me?
Exactly. But man, Jesus, Jesus talks about the tongue, and in the New Testament talks about the tongue. It's powerful. We have to be very careful, and it teaches us to only uplift. That's it. Only uplift. Never really have a bad word to say, putting people down. So that's kind of just what I see here with Noah's father professing a blessing, or like a blessing basically on his life. So that's kind of all I got. Anything else?
That's pretty much it.
All right. So we'll go to the next section.
Because nothing stands up better.
Chapter 6, A World Gone Wrong. Then the people began to multiply on the earth, and daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw the beautiful women and took any they wanted as their wives. Then the Lord said, my spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they are only mortal flesh. In the future, their normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years. In those days, and for some time after, giant Nephilites lived on the earth. For whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, and I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them. But Noah found favor with the Lord.
So what you're seeing?
So the beginning, we believe that there was angels who had intercourse with beautiful women, and
You think those
and
were
then
fallen angels?
Yes, it was. It was fallen angels.
Fallen angels. Or fallen angels are like demons, right?
Yeah, demons are really just they're angels that work with Satan. So I think sometimes people think of demons as something completely different. When you think of a demon, it's just an angel of Satan. Whereas when you think of an angel of God, when you naturally think of the word angel, you just think of an angel of God. But demons are just angels of Satan. That's why you're going to see in Revelation, and I'll prove that just real fast, and then I'll let Matt continue on his point. You're going to see in Revelation chapter 12, starting at verses, where is it at? Revelation chapter 12, starting at verses 7, it says, "Then there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels, and the dragon lost the battle, and he and his angels were forced out of heaven. The great dragon, the ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all his angels." So again, demons are pretty much Satan's angels. But yeah, Mac, you can continue.
and then God put something that lasted till today, a cap on the lifespan of humans. He says, "My spirit will not put up with humans for such a long time, for they will only be mortal flesh. They are only mortal flesh in the future. Their normal lifespan will be no more than 120 years." So you see the descendants of Cain and Seth for a period of time were living up to almost 1,000 years. God says, "I'm done with that."
Yeah, and I wanted to put a pin here just to emphasize something, because a lot of times I read this when I didn't have much understanding. I was like, well, that means no one could live over 120 years. But what I want to point out here is God's saying the normal lifespan, meaning
Mhm.
average Joe will not live past 120, but it is possible that somebody can live past 120. So I just wanted to point that out.
Because after I think Moses definitely lives past that, I think. But there's people that live definitely a little bit longer than that.
Yeah,
So
we're gonna see that.
it's just a time frame.
Mhm.
And I will continue. Verse 4 says, "In those days, sometime after, giant Nephilites lived on earth. So these are the offspring of the angel and human children, and they became, I guess, they had superpowers or some form of ability that was abnormal. They became heroes and famous warriors. And then,
So
guys, go ahead.
so we just talked about wait, where was that again? The sons of God saw beautiful. So we're I just want to reiterate. We said sons of God are the fallen angels.
Yeah, and I think we'd have to go
It's a
to
it's so sons of God is also used as angels, but God sees them as wicked, so we can understand them as fallen angels.
Okay.
But God, the scriptures use sons of God as non-fallen angels other places, so we
Okay.
understand these are angels, but they are angels that sinned, so
Okay.
therefore we understand them as fallen angels.
Gotcha.
and you're gonna see and I'm gonna read in Jude and in 2 Peter, just it gives context on this. In Jude, it says in Jude chapter 1, there's only one chapter in Jude. It says in verses 6, "And I remind you of the angels who did not stay within the limits of authority God gave them, but left the place where they belong. God has kept them securely chained in prisons of darkness, waiting for the great day of judgment. And then in 2 Peter chapter 2, starting at verses 4, he says, for God did not spare even the angels who sinned. He threw them into hell and gloomy pits of darkness where they are being held until the day of judgment. So the reason we call them fallen angels is because they're no longer in the highest heaven. They're in hell. That's what makes them a fallen angel. If you were in the heavens and now you're in hell, when you came down, you are a fallen angel. That's really the term of where we get fallen angel. And they're in hell because they sinned. They got outside of the boundaries that God placed them in. So now they've been placed in gloomy pits of darkness in hell until the day of judgment. And that is the reason why that happened, because not only did they get out of the place of their boundaries, but then they slept with women, human women. And that's what the Nephilites were. That was, so a Nephilite in a sense would have been a half human, half angel, if you think about that.
Would you say earth rather than hell?
No. Hell is its own place.
Because if they were here, I guess they can go between hell and earth.
Well, yeah, because you have to keep Hebrews in mind. Angels, it says, are in Hebrews chapter 1, starting at verses 14. It describes angels, because we do know angels, they're God's messengers. They do go back and forth, because there's that's what the Bible describes it as. You're going to see when Gabriel shows up to talk to Zechariah in the book of Luke, he says, God sent me to give you this good news. You're going to have a son named John. So we know that angels are the ones who kind of go back and forth between heaven and earth, bringing good news to humans. And God, that's how he operates. He can choose to speak to you through a prophet like Moses, or he can send an angel like Gabriel. So God is God. The Bible says, who can know God's thoughts and his ways? It gets complicated when you try to really narrow it down, because it just is not going to happen. But we do know angels are, when God allows it, they can show up on earth and, in human form. And yeah, that's what it says in Hebrews 1:14. Therefore, angels are only servants, spirits sent to care for people who will inherit salvation. So it says, but they're sent. They're sent to care for people. So what that tells us is angels go back and forth. Angels go back and forth. That's why the Bible says angels can't die. They go back and forth.
That makes sense.
So so the Nephilites were half angels, half humans. And to me, I just think it's crazy that the angels would have had the lack of fear of God, because angels
would have to
are
be influenced by Satan.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
I would have to be influenced by him.
And the fact that, so another question, we could keep this high level, but we can also assume or kind of take the biblical facts we have and say angels can change from physical to spiritual and back to physical, right? Like they can kind of change body, because if you can have intercourse with a physical woman, then does that mean you can turn physical?
Well, the thing that I know in scripture is there's different categories of angels. Like we're gonna see in Genesis, we just read it in Genesis. Cherubim. There's seraphim. There's there's a type of, so there's different types of angels. So that's why I say if you get in even in Ezekiel and Isaiah, they're seeing angels in heaven that have like a bear's claws, a lion's face. So there's all different types of angels. Therefore, I do believe there is a type of angel that can have a body, because again, Gabriel showed up and he was talking to Zechariah. So that's proof in itself. And that's not the first time, because even when Peter was in a prison, it says when the angel of the Lord showed up, he thought he was in a vision. And then he realized, oh, snap, this is really happening. So we've seen in scenarios in scripture, angels have appeared in bodily form. So that lets me know it's possible. But I don't believe every angel has that, because certain angels are different. The same way you and me have different gifts. You could be an apostle. I could be a prophet. Max could be a teacher. Someone else is an evangelist. We have different gifts, meaning you're not going to manifest the gift that I have because God didn't design you to. And that's all it's going to be. So, but to answer the question, I do believe some angels, yes, they can. Because even Hebrews, I believe, verses 12 says some of them have entertained angels, which is proof there have been angels in body. And I've seen it in my personal testimony. I've seen it happen. God is my witness. We got in a car accident. The angel of the Lord appeared. She was a regular woman. But when she appeared, we knew for her to get to where we were in the middle of a big section highway or in the intersection, which means from the sidewalk to where we were in the middle of the street, there's no way she comes to where we are without us seeing her cross. So when she appeared, we were all like startled, like, whoa, did you see where she came from? And they're like, no. So she starts praying for us. And when she hears the ambulance coming from the distance, she's like, I'm going to tell my church to pray for you. I got to go. So we're all like, yo, keep your eyes on her so we can see where she goes. And to this day, it's something that blows my mind because I was only in 4th grade. I remember this to this day. She walks around the front of the car, fam. God is my witness. Kill me now if I'm making this up. She walks around the front of the car, fam, and just disappears. Every time I tell the story, I get goosebumps because it's unreal to me. Pierre was there. You could ask Pierre. Tati Kitsa, Billy, they was all there. She walked around the front of the car. And I remember when Tati Kitsa gave the testimony, she even told the church, an angel of the Lord appeared to us because we all seen her walk around. And when I say she disappeared, Max, it's not even like in movies where it's like maybe, it's just,
you don't see her anymore.
That's it.
And sometimes you see that. You'll see in the scriptures where it says God hid them from this person.
Yeah.
Or God revealed him to this person.
Yep.
So sometimes they don't disappear. Maybe sometimes God just hides them from you.
That's man. Because okay, let me read the verse that
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Hebrews 13 it says, keep on loving each other as brothers and sisters. It says, don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. It says, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it. So to Max's point, he could do what he wants. So maybe you could see an angel, but everybody else can't. Like he can make it seem to whoever he wants. Right? And then we'll start to read further down in Abraham and Lot's story where you see 2 angels are able to be seen by Lot and the other men. So it's an interesting topic. But
that's the thing is it's real though. It is that's why I said people have to understand. I understand the Bible was written 2,000 years ago, and we live in America where everything is like has to make sense. So it's hard for people to read this and really believe this stuff. Like an angel appeared, and I don't believe that. An angel, dude. All I know is God is my witness. I seen an angel, and she was a regular woman, and she just disappeared. And I was afraid to sleep by myself for damn near 4 or 5 months because I always thought she's just gonna appear again. And Marine's like, dude, you saw an angel. You should be happy. I was scared, but the point is, yeah, angels can have regular bodies depending on what kind of angel they are. And yeah, that's just like I said. This is crazy, man. Yeah, this is crazy.
I do believe that though. That God can. There's different realms, man. So like that's why you can't see God. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, when Jesus was about to leave, he had a glorified body. So he ascended up to heaven. Like after he told the disciples, that he was going to get the Holy Spirit. He ascended up to heaven and he was gone. So what I started
continue, my bad.
I'm just saying the last point is what I'm starting to see is there's a glorified body and we can't see everything with the naked eye is basically what I want to say. And to Max's point, God can allow us to see something that we are not used to seeing.
And that's another thing I wanted to make another point is Jesus himself, after he dies, it says when he resurrected from the dead, he appears to 2 of his followers who are walking. But it says God hid.
You see that?
So it's Jesus, Max, but God doesn't allow them to know it's him.
That's the point.
This begins to show me, fam, yo, Dude at the job can very well be an angel. You would never know,
bro.
And that's why I think the principle of what they're saying is just be kind to everybody. You never know.
That's crazy.
And I think when we have a conversation with guys like, oh, you passed the test. See that guy you helped? He was an angel. Oh, you failed that test. You see? You failed that test. But
you want to know why that makes more sense again, Max? What did Jesus say? He says, when we get to heaven, I'm going to say to some people, when I was hungry.
Yo, that's another one.
Think about what
that's
saying,
true.
Max.
He's like, when did you do that?
Bro,
the dude you saw this. That's why I said
sometimes-
with some poor people, I don't care what anyone says. Some of those poor people are angels. This is my own discernment.
But
There'll
it's
be
true.
times I'm seeing these dudes. I'm like, nah, bro, you're an angel. I'm not. And they know I know, bro. I'm like, bro, I know you're an angel. Yo, bro, nah, man. Like, yo, you're a good guy. Like, yo, man. Like,
Nah, that's how I feel too. I'd be like,
Oh,
there gotta be one angel out here. You feel me? Sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah, bro. I be saying that. And it's John chapter 20. John chapter 20, starting at verses 19. It says that Sunday evening. No, it's not that one. That's not the one. It's in, where is it at? Where was it? John. Maybe it's in Luke's gospel.
I think I know what you're talking about. It might be in Luke.
Yeah, it's probably, it is Luke. So it's in Luke chapter 24, starting at verses 13. It says that same day, two of Jesus's followers were walking to the village of Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, they were talking about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things, Jesus himself suddenly came and began walking with them. But God kept them from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there the last few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. "The things that happened to Jesus." So I'm going to stop there, but the point is clear is Jesus himself appears to them, but God keeps them from recognizing him. So that's what I begin to tell you. This world is God's supernatural build. Either you believe that or you don't. But the reality is, Jesus himself said, when we get to heaven, he's going to say to some people, "When I was hungry, you didn't feed me." That verse has made me look at poor people differently today. Because I'm like, dude, like Max said, might not be all of y'all, but one of you is an angel.
What are y'all?
And I'm not.
no.
One of y'all for sure.
And the fact that, remember when Jesus he walked through the door while it was shut, like he's a physical body, but then he literally before he left to go to God, after he resurrected, I think Thomas and them didn't believe, so
Thomas.
I think I know what you're talking about.
he kind of
he just appeared.
He just appeared, bro. So what does that show you, kid? That shows you, bro, man, that shows you there's another type of body, you know what I'm saying, that you get. And I think the angels already have that, but
they already have that. It's a spiritual body.
Thomas was able to touch and feel that body. You feel me? So that means these people, these fallen angels, sons of God, they were physical as well. Because they were able to have intercourse with these women. So interesting to know that.
And
another movie I would request is What If. I just watched it yesterday. It was actually about this stuff. And the movie
What If?
There's an angel who's in a physical body, but he's telling the guy, "I'm an angel," and the guy's like, "Yeah, right." But they actually, because it's a Christian movie, and they reference Hebrews chapter 13, verses 1, the one you had read, and it talked about how some people have entertained angels without knowing. So if you guys never watched it or anyone watching it,
I think I watched it. Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, What If? That was a great movie.
Yeah, I remember there was another movie with Denzel Washington. I don't know if you guys know that movie.
Which one?
He's like an angel. Let me see if
I never watched it.
I think it's Pastor or something. Let's see.
Oh, I might check it out, and I never watched it. I didn't know that.
Fallen. Oh no, it's the preacher's wife.
Oh yeah, okay.
When did that one come out?
1996. It had Whitney Houston in it, and he's like an angel, and I guess he's helping the preacher, whatever the case is. It's kind of weird because I don't know, he has like a thing for the wife, but it's not a thing. It's just like I guess she likes him, but he's not a real he's not a real person. But I mean, I digress.
But that's one thing I think, and that's why the Bible tells us not to worship angels, because angels have more. They're higher than us in authority and in rank. And the Bible even says when Jesus came into this world, he was given a rank a little lower than the angel, which goes to show you the angels do have a high rank in comparison to humans. They're greater than us as of right now. And that's why some people worship angels, but we're not supposed to worship angels because God still created them. So we don't worship angels, but angels are real. They are real, and they have a limit. They have a limit that they have to abide by in terms of the authority under God. And you're going to see even in Revelation chapter 20, I believe it is, John is seeing all this stuff. The angels are showing him so many things in heaven. And then John says in Revelation chapter, I believe it's 21, if I'm correct. Verses 22 in Revelation chapter 22, starting at verses 8, it says, I, John, am the one who heard and saw all these things. And when I heard and saw them, I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel who showed them to me. But he said, no, don't worship me. I'm a servant of God, just like you and your brothers, the prophets, as well as all who obey what is written in this book. Worship only God. That's an angel telling them that. So just a reminder, we do not worship angels. Yes, angels are given power. Yes, angels are supernatural beings, but we do not worship angels.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can wrap up the next piece, which is verses 5 to 8. We could decode, touch on that.
So let's see. So basically, at this point, there's these Nephilites running around, and it's half angel, half man, and I'm pretty sure God's not pleased with this. So God is observing, and then eventually he's like, dang, why did I do this? This is the first time I guess he has regret of making.
And that's the thing, because I don't think it's regret, because God can't regret anything. I think this is the writer's perspective of God, but it's not necessarily regret. God cannot regret anything. But I think it's the from the writer's perspective, he's seeing. But
the writer of Genesis is God. It is God, because you have to remember the Bible does say that Paul says all Scripture is influenced by the Holy Spirit.
But it still has to be written from somebody's perspective.
But for me, I don't understand. So what makes? Let me think about this. We're saying if it says I am sorry I ever made them, you wouldn't consider that regret. What would you consider that?
I consider that just God being disappointed.
So
but like I said, I think it's from the writer's perspective. He sees it as that. But I think you see that a couple of times in the scriptures, even with Moses, where God is going to wipe out certain people or break his covenant. We know God cannot break his covenant. So I think that's why I say it's from the perspective of the writer, because God cannot deny himself. And obviously God is sovereign, so he can't.
But you have to remember this, though, Mac. You have to keep this in perspective, though, Mac, because the Bible says that, God himself says this. That's why I said I do take it as it's God, because if Jesus says the scriptures can't be altered, if the scriptures can't be altered, I could never say anything on behalf of God unless that's God, because it's like a prophecy. The Bible says if I prophesy and say next year Stanley's gonna have a baby and he doesn't, then I didn't speak on behalf of God. Because if I speak on behalf of God, what I say has to happen, or it wasn't God. Therefore, what I'm saying is, if it's saying this, and then we also know that we're made in the image and likeness of God. Because of that, you have to look at your nature and characteristics. Have you ever been sorry that you did something?
Yeah.
So that's my point.
That's not regret, and this is why I say that.
Say regret. It doesn't say regret. I'm not saying regret.
I can pull back my words on regret.
No, I'm not saying regret.
But what I can
could be disappointed.
What I can say is in verse 7 it says, "And the Lord said." So anytime I see that in the Bible, that's from the Lord. That's from
okay, but
Lord,
that's different. That's different. That's exactly my point. So verse 5 and 6 is the writer explaining, I guess, how he feels like God is feeling, and then he quotes God in verse 7.
In verse 7.
You understand what I'm saying? If you're looking at something, you're like, dang, he looks disappointed, he looks regretful, and then you quote God,
and he says,
and this is what God says.
Yeah, God says, he said on the last sentence, "I am sorry I ever made them." That's from God himself. So therefore, that's why I say it's him who's saying that. Therefore,
that's true.
So now,
this is.
What I will do is back up from what I said from regret. Like, let's say he didn't say regret. Maybe
I'm sorry I ever made them.
No, but yeah. No, I'm not gonna add a word that's not there. But no, I do believe it is exactly what it says. God was sorry that he ever made them, and put them on the earth. It broke his heart, because you have to think about it like this. God has a perfect plan. It's like when you discipline your kid. It doesn't feel good to have to hit your kid, but you got to do it. So he's saying he's sorry, to me, doesn't mean it's regret. To your point, I'm not reading that as regret, because God is God and he has a perfect plan. That's like saying you don't think it hurt God to see Jesus on a cross being murked. Of course that hurt. But it has to happen because I have a plan in play. So what I'm saying is that the reason I was saying the whole this is God in terms of him feeling sorry is because God is an emotional person like you and me. The thing that people have to understand, I think sometimes we see God as this mojo guy who doesn't cry, but if we're created in his image and his likeness, everything about you, Max, is like God. Everything about Stanley, every single human being has characteristics like God. If that makes sense. Because you're created in his image and his likeness. So when you cry, that's a characteristic of God. When you know what I mean? When you laugh, that's a characteristic of God. When you get angry, I see Bible where it says God was angry. So that's a characteristic of God. The reality is God feeling sorry, it doesn't represent regret. It just represents emotion. That's what it represents to me.
Yeah,
I can hit my kid, and I'm like, dang, I gotta hit him. But from an emotional perspective,
it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that this happened.
But it's not regret, because I do it 10 times out of 10 to purge sin out of him. So it's not regret, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He quotes him here, then I do agree with that. And then the 8th, it says, "But Noah found favor with the Lord." So through that time of God being emotional, he sees one person that was someone that he can feel encouraged about.
So for me, the way I'm seeing this is like God had a piece of paper, he drew something, and he was like, I don't like it. And he erased it, and he kept the one thing that he could kind of continue with. Is basically what he did. He's
God. If you keep that context, I believe Paul talks about it in Romans about the clay. He says,
exactly.
If God creates the clay, to Stanley's point, and he says, you know what, this is trash, I don't want it anymore. He has every right to say, I'm throwing it away, but I'm gonna keep this one piece. You're right. You're right about that.
That's
And we do the same thing. You've ever cooked something and it's just trash, but I'm gonna keep this. I made this. This isn't good. I'm gonna throw this away, but I'm gonna keep. Like I said, we're created in His image and His likeness.
right.
God creates and God destroys if He wants, because He's God.
God, He's a creator. So for me, when it says I'm sorry I ever made them, you know, that's just how he felt, and he had a. It's like he put a reset button. Like he's like, let's start over, basically, with Noah.
And I think that's the thing. I believe Romans says it when he says, "Who can know God's?" I want to read that because I love that Bible verse, because I think sometimes people can get confused reading the Bible. Like, why would God? Why would? But never get to the point where you're saying, "Why would God?" Because you're not gonna understand why would God. Where is it at? I want to read that Bible verse. It says it in Romans chapter 11, starting at verses 33. Paul writes, "Oh, how great are God's riches and wisdom and knowledge." He says, "How impossible it is for us to understand His decisions and His ways. For who can know the Lord's thoughts? Who knows enough to give Him advice? And who has given Him so much that He needs to pay it back?" So the reality is, some things you're going to read in the Bible won't make sense. But you gotta trust God to the point where you say, "I'm okay with that."
Exactly. And that's what I say. God's sovereignty. If you understand that God is someone who's all powerful, all knowing, then you just trust that. He has everything written down.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
But yeah, that's kind of what I got. You guys have anything else from this?
But that's good. I think we can take the next portion.
All right, cool. So we'll continue.
The story of Noah. This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Noah was the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now God saw that the earth had become corrupt and was filled with violence. God observed all this corruption in the world, for everyone on earth was corrupt. So God said to Noah, "I have decided to destroy all living creatures, for they have filled the earth with violence. Yes, I will wipe them all out along with the earth. Build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar, inside and out. Then construct decks and stalls throughout its interior. Make the boat 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. Leave an 18-inch opening below the roof all the way around the boat. Put the door on the side and build 3 decks inside the boat, lower, middle, and upper. Look, I am about to cover the earth with a flood that will destroy every living thing that breathes. Everything on earth will die, but I will confirm my covenant with you. So enter the boat, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring a pair of every kind of animal, a male and a female, into the boat with you to keep them alive during the flood. Pairs of every kind of bird and every kind of animal and every kind of small animal that scurries along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. And be sure to take on board enough food for your family and for all the animals." So Noah did everything exactly as God had commanded him.
I love this. What we see here, I always tell people, you're going to do something for God, you better do it right. God is an orderly God. He is a God of order. He's given them feet wide, feet high, feet long, X amount. Do it exactly like this. And what I like is verses 22. It says, so Noah did everything exactly as God has commanded. If Noah does one thing different, he screws up. Because you're going to see when God tells Saul to go to the Amalekites and he says, kill everyone, everything that destroy it. Saul does everything, Max, except 2 things. He spares the king and then he keeps the best cattle and sheep and all that. But he's like, but God, I did everything. No. when you don't do it exactly how God said it, we always say partial obedience is still disobedience. 99% truth with 1% lie, it's all a lie. I don't care. So one thing you see that stuck out is if God says, Max, go to Texas and go to San Antonio. If you go to Texas and you go to Austin or you go to Dallas, but you said, God, I went to Texas. No, you didn't do it as he said. It means nothing. And so you're going to see, to have God's favor, you better be in 100% obedience to what he's telling you to do. Man.
That's true. That's true. You see how the Ark of the Covenant was built.
Same thing.
Same thing. The temple, when Solomon was building the temple, same thing. He gave him instructions. And to this day, that's how we should operate. So that why don't we see power in people nowadays? Is because we're not doing certain things the way God has intended us to do it. So we have to understand God does not change. He is.
Yes.
So we have to understand that if we want something, we have to do it his way. His way. In the end, Noah wanted to stay alive, do it the way God told you to, and then you will last the rain that came.
And another example that comes to mind, which is why I'm really trying to emphasize this for us as well as anyone watching. You're gonna see, Max, Moses comes a long way, Max. Moses led the people in Israel. He's the plague. Man, Moses is the guy. Then God's like, all right, you're doing good. Speak to the rock. And the water's gonna come out. Nah, Moses is like, I'm gonna hit the rock. Because you do what the way I said, your reign ends here. You're not gonna enter. You're gonna see the land. You're not gonna go in. What, like Stanley said, people begin to say, why don't we see signs and wonders today? Why does the church look? Because if you take some of the Bible, Max, and you abide by some of it, but you don't abide by all of it, you're just as good as the dude who doesn't read it at all. Because even James says, if you obey 9 out of 10 of the law back, but then you don't follow one, he says you're just as bad as the person who didn't read it. And this is what I said, it's time for us as Christians, Max, to say either we're going to go through a sanctification process from Genesis to Revelation, or let's just put the book down. Because the reality is, if you want to be an acceptable sacrifice in God's eyes, like Stanley said, you got to do it his way to the T. Mm-hmm. To the T. Mm-hmm. No, God, I'm not going to do sexual immorality, but forgiveness, God, no, he stole from me. The problem is, if you don't do it to the T, this is why you're not going to move in that level of anointing, because you're not doing it to the T. And I assure you, if Noah would, Max, have just altered one thing, forget about it. That's why I think 22 is specific. Verse 22 is written that way for a reason, Max. Verse 22, the details of how it's written is like that for you and me for a reason. So Noah did everything exactly as God had commanded him. That they put that there for a reason. So you and me can see when you do it exactly how God said to do it, that's when you're going to see his favor.
Yep.
No, that's true. That's true.
And I want people to understand that like JR said, God could do what he wants. So you can't look at God and say, oh, he killed these human beings. He is God. He could press the reset button and say, hey man, I'm starting over. You can't question God on that. So for me, it's
for someone to say that, I think a good example is, again, have you ever been cooking and the food you made was bad and you threw it away and started from scratch?
Exactly. There you have it. God seen there was a better way, and that's what he did. And then he's so specific, man. Like for me, that's the thing I love about God so much. He adheres to his own rules. Like for me, he could have just scratched everything and said, I'm gonna just create Adam from the sin, the dirt again. But he said, I have to keep that bloodline alive. He kept Noah. Instead of scratching everything, he kept Noah. And he's like, this, I have to foresee this through. I have to conquer sin, right? In the end, what I see is like God, even though he can really hack everything and do what he wants, he still abides to what he has to do in the procedure he has lined up. Like, because you ask yourself, why did you need 2 of every animals? And why did you need to keep Noah alive, and his sons? You know what I'm saying? Like, why did he do that? Because he's a God of order. He's a God of, he has a plan. You could see that he had a plan. Like it's not something random. Like everything he does is so strategic. And that's one thing I give
and
so
one thing I pointed out last week, and we kind of touched on it earlier today, that is another thing that sticks out to me that I want to encourage us as well as anyone watching this is have a zeal in your walk with God, because the reality is there are people around you who will benefit because of your relationship with God. Dude, it says in verses 9, Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. But when I go to verses 18, it says, God says to Noah, I will confirm my covenant with you. Still speaking of Noah, but now look what he says. So enter the boat, you and your wife and your sons and their wife. My God. So not only did Noah's wife get saved, his children and his children's wives, and not just that, he says to Noah in verses 19, bring a pair of every kind of animal, male. So even the animals, one of each, a male and female of each animal, because of Noah. That means for someone watching, you have a dog. The dog gets favored. They say this dog breed only lives 10 years, but because it's your dog, he's gonna live 30 years. Because God's favorite, even the animals got to eat, fam. The animals got life because of my boy's righteousness. So and Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, when he's talking about the union, he says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 13, he says, and if a believing woman has a husband who is not a believer and he is willing to continue living with her, she must not leave him. He says, for the believing wife brings holiness to her marriage, and the believing husband brings holiness to his marriage. Otherwise, your children would not be holy, but now they are holy. So again, you see this thing where, like, if my wife isn't a Christian, but I am, just because of my righteousness, my kids will be righteous. My God, this is what I love about God. It's like, and I always say, if you even connect that in a worldly example, James Jones has 3 rings because he was riding LeBron's coattail. My guy, as long as you're on the squad, you win. He got a ring. When Brown shows up with a ring, James Jones has the same ring just because he was on the team. So I think this is another encouragement for us to have a zeal in becoming pure, becoming holy, because the reality is there's people around us who will benefit because of us. There's people around us who one day they're going to be serious about God because they looked at Max turn his life around. They looked at Stanley become a man of God with his Bible. And you might not even know this, Max. You're influencing someone right now and you don't even know. But it's because he's seeing you with your commitment. Dang, this guy shows up every week. Dang, now this guy's there. I remember this guy, but now he's got the mic in his hand preaching, man. And it's that righteousness. It's that zeal. It's that commitment you're making, even on the days you don't feel like going. But because you went, this kid, you were his example without even knowing that. And the reality is now one day he can be saved because of you. So I think that this always reminds me, don't do what you're doing behind closed doors just for you, man. Because the reality is someone else might benefit from it down the line. So always have that perspective, when we're trying to grow in godliness.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good point, because I remembered what Jesus said about giving. He says, your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and pouring into your lap. So the overflow of blessing can, if you're on that table, you're gonna touch that overflow. So yeah, man, that favor that God gives on his anointed, everybody eats, bro.
I love that, man. I love. You think about that. You eat just because you're connected to dude. God could have said, Noah, you get in the ark, just you. Your wife,
Yeah, he
kids.
could have did that for sure. Or his wife at least. But
You and
kids,
your
they
wife.
messing up.
That's
Nah.
it. But he said your sons can come too, and their wife. You know what I'm saying?
That's crazy.
Because it said he was the only righteous.
Only righteous one fan.
I mean, his wife
Sure.
wasn't righteous. His kids wasn't all the way spotless. You know what I'm saying? That tells you, man. That's why I say, if you let the Holy Spirit lead you to, purity, having a real godly lifestyle, you can be used. You know what I'm saying? God could use you to further his will. He's not gonna, that shows you, man, this connects. God's not gonna use somebody who is not in fellowship with him.
Mm-hmm.
God's
And,
not
look what it said in verse 9. He wasn't just in any kind of fellowship with God.
Yeah.
What does it say?
Close.
Close fellowship.
That means, what does that show you? You know what I'm saying? That's why we say babies don't work. Baby Christians do not work. You don't work. You're in the lab. God is working on you. But there's gonna come a time where you're gonna be ready to be used. And that's that sanctification process that gets you there. So for me, yeah, God doesn't change, like we all know. And if he literally, he was like, bro, I don't see anybody, but because of Noah, he was like, I can use somebody. But if there was, let's say there was nobody, he would probably scratch everything.
What you take there then, fam, is Noah was a seed that saved humanity. And we ought to desire to be a seed, man. Because I think some churches always talk about sowing a seed, but the seed isn't always money, man. Sometimes the seed is your life, bro, your lifestyle. You say, I'm gonna let my life be a seed to produce righteous living in this community. Let your life be a seed, not your pockets, bro. Because the reality is, if your life isn't a reflection of godliness and holiness, like Cain, God don't even want your money, bro.
That's true.
Think about that. Think about that. You think I'm gonna put all this money in, but the reality, because even in 3 John, I believe it says that the teachers that would go from different places, they didn't accept money from unbelievers. So the reality is, it's not, the seed isn't about the money. The seed is your life, bro. Let your life be a sacrifice for God, and through your life, other people can be saved, bro.
Mm-hmm. That's the beautiful part about it. Is God, he, for mighty things, God is gonna use his most purest soldiers, and honestly, that's just how he is. He hates sin. He can't stand it. He doesn't want to be around it. So he calls us to be pure. And he gave us help through the Holy Spirit. And that's the beautiful message about Jesus Christ, because all before that, before he died, like, it was impossible. Like, you find a handful of people that are pure. Like, when we start to read about Abraham and Lot, Abraham's like, if there's only 10 people, will you not kill, destroy the city? God was like, sure. He knew, like, there's nobody pure out there. You know what I'm saying? So, and then with Jesus, though, he allows it. Like, he's like, humanly speaking, it's impossible to inherit the kingdom. But with this, the help of God, with the help of the Holy Spirit, everything's possible. So for us, as long as we follow the Spirit, we'll have dominance over sin. But it still stands. God is gonna make sure we're ready and pure before he starts to use us in a mighty way. And that's kind of what I see here.
Okay, so do we want to stop and then do the other ones, or do we want to add it to the recording, or do we want to be consistent?
Yeah, we'll be consistent and stop here,
and then we'll
pick up. So I'll end it over here if we don't have anything else to add here. Cool.